Welcome back to Things of Gold, a Snarky Puppy podcast by Storm Sound and Osiris Media. My name is Ryan Storm.
And I'm Megan Gliona.
And we are back today for the Big 10, episode 10.
Wow.
With a crazy show to commemorate episode 10. Totally done on purpose and not just coincidental time.
Exactly, we're masterminds.
It's good. We are journeying deep into 2019. We are at September 28th. 2019 at the Music Box Village in New Orleans. There's a lot to talk about in this show. But before we dive in, let's talk about what Snarky Puppy is currently doing in real life at the time of this recording. It is July. They are on the European festival circuit. Following the band members on Instagram is kind of crazy because you see they will finish the gig and then have a 3-hour drive to a hotel, and then they'll get to the hotel at 3 a.m. and then have to get up to go to the airport at like 5:30 to fly to the next gig, which, sometimes there's like 2 flights and a 3-hour drive. Like it's a crazy schedule for these few weeks that they're over there.
Yeah, and they do this, every summer, every time they tour during the summer, right? It's like, and it's not like they just take the rest of the year off either. Like these guys are hard workers,
Yeah, luckily they get August off, before the big North American tour in September, which I'm very excited to be seeing 2, hopefully 3 shows on. I might be going to St. Louis now.
Wow,
for a festival they're playing there.
That's fun.
And 2 shows out in Colorado, which are going to be awesome. But I'm excited to keep seeing them. I am surprised that we do not have a fall European tour announcement. November, December-ish. Something that could maybe work around off nights of Goose European tour.
I knew you were trying to think about this. Do you think it'll happen? Do you think they'll announce?
It usually does. There's usually October, November tour, something around those lines. So I don't know. I feel like this is late for an announcement, but
yeah,
I feel like it could happen.
That'd be so sick to see them over there too, just to see how different it is and the vibes. I think that'd be incredible.
Yeah, and I think I'd be very surprised if their touring year ends in mid-October. That just doesn't seem like something they would do. Usually, in 2019, for example, they did this the beginning of the year. They started in April with some shows in Japan, Australia, whatever, and then they came to the US in May, did a month-long US tour, and then the Europe summer festivals, and then August off, and then September again, different parts of North America, ending in early October, and then Europe end of October through end of November. So
wow, yeah,
we'll see what happens. But they're busy. If anyone here has not seen the video of Eric Gales sitting in with them on Take It from the other day, I think it was at Pori Jazz in Finland. It's so good when Justin, while he's playing, takes out his phone and videos 3 minutes of the guitar solo, because it's so good. He also he pans the camera around to the rest of the band briefly and just happens to catch one of Larnell's toms just falling over
so
in
great
the middle of the song. So it's great. So go check that out on Justin's Instagram if you haven't seen it yet, because it's really cool.
Yeah, I love following them along and seeing what they're doing. They just seem so enthusiastic and kind of inspired. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. And, they did the full horn section over there in Europe for the first half of the tour, which is, a rare and excellent occurrence. We got a nice surprise live stream from Jazza Vienne in France, which was nice, to get a full show, with pro shot video and audio and all that stuff from this lineup. So that's cool. I've posted 1 clip, probably more by the time this episode comes out, but I will be sharing moments from that show because it's a great show.
So great.
Yeah. Well, let's turn back the clock here. Let's head back to 2019 to this very, very, very unique show for a lot of reasons. Venue, lineup, set list, the way songs are played, etc. For those of you who, if you're listening to this episode without listening to this show first, please stop right now and go listen to this show, because it needs to be heard to be believed.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the venue. And even at the end of the show, Michael comments on that. He said, this is such an interesting place. It's a challenge. And I imagine because they are, in different spaces.
Hmm.
And so the way that it's set up, if you've never looked at venues of the Music Box Village, you have to. If you're listening to this, it's incredible. They call themselves an ongoing experiment in musical architecture. So it's an outdoor musical garden, and it has like 16 or more little musical houses. So it's an interactive art site and performance space. And it's designed by the New Orleans Airlift, which is like an artist driven initiative. It seems really interesting. And the musicians are set up in these little kind of like tree houses across the property. And so usually, this band is used to being tight together with Michael kind of like giving all these visual cues. And I imagine it must have been so different in this experience because they couldn't do that. And the stage setup was really interesting. The horn section was set up in a shop underneath a massive chandelier. The guitarist played from a balcony. The organist took the stage, and the drummer was in the kitchen, which was like a musical treehouse completely composed of pots and pans, which
Yeah.
definitely you can hear throughout the show.
Very much so. It sounds like Jameson and Keita both have wild and crazy additions to their setup, and it sounds like it's not just them playing percussion throughout the show. I think there's other people hopping in and out. Also what's interesting, I'll just go over the lineup really quickly. We have Bob Reynolds on saxophone, Chris Bullock on tenor sax, flute, and alto flute, Mike Maz Maher on trumpet and flugelhorn, Justin Stanton on trumpet and keyboards, Bobby Sparks on keyboards, Michael League bass and guitar, Jameson Ross on drums, and Keita Ogawa on percussion. But Ryan, you may be asking, where's the guitarist? Well, sadly, adding to the already weird nature of this venue and how this show was going to play out, Bob Lanzetti unfortunately hurt his back that day, and so had to miss this show. And so there's no guitar, so that affects obviously the overall sound of the band and the set list choices. And so Michael decides to pick up the guitar on a couple of songs, which then Justin covers all the bass on synth. So it's really, really cool, and we'll get into that immediately. But this show blew me away the first time I heard it. This was in 2019. Obviously, Michael wasn't writing out the lengthy set list notes, and so you wouldn't get that vibe just by looking at it on livesnarky.com when you go to buy the show. You just see the set list and the lineup. And so I was kind of like, it's the only Binky from 2019 that's recorded. There were 2 other versions played during the summer European festival circuit. But this is the only version available for purchase on Live Snarky. I believe one of the European ones might be available, but it's the, Gnawa one, which is weird in its own way. But this one, I was like, this is like a weird set list in a lot of ways. Like it's 6 songs, no encore, and it doesn't show you the track lengths or anything. And so eventually I was like, okay, like I got to hear this one Binky from 2019 and see what it is. And so I downloaded the show, and then I looked at the timestamps, and I was like, okay, 22-minute Binky, 20-minute Xavi, like what is happening here? And they list Bob Lanzetti. It's kind of a red herring. They list Bob Lanzetti as being in the show notes on Live Snarky. And so, you go into it, and I was thinking to myself the whole time, like, I don't hear the guitar. And then it threw me off during Xavi when you can hear the guitar. But I was like, what's going on here? And so, eventually when I, put more of the pieces of the puzzle together, I was like, wow, like, this is the craziest show ever.
Yeah, it's like perfect for someone who loves jam bands like me because it's super experimental, and there's psychedelic moments, and it's very risky and free sounding in a way that is, this band is so tight, and they still sound tight, but they sound like looser in a way that I think you just can't replicate unless you're in, the circumstances just led to that, like you were saying, like Bob not being there and then being in separate spaces. Like there's just these added elements that kind of like throw a wrench in the normal Snarky Puppy vibe. And it's in a great way.
Yeah. My whole ulterior motive for starting this podcast was so this show could be on Nugs so I could send it to people.
That's amazing. Well, it worked. Yeah.
Yes, it did. All right. Well, let's dive in here with this massive 22-minute Binky. This is my favorite part of the show. You know, the opener, the first
Mm.
20 minutes. I mean, obviously, this is your favorite song. It's an amazing
Yeah.
song.
It's
This is the
such a great
first
song.
Binky we've heard since episode 2. Have
It's
we
been
had a
a
Binky
really
since
long
then?
time.
Oh no, since the massive 32-minute one from South America. Was that episode 7? That was episode 7.
A few
Nope, episode
episodes ago, though, right?
Episode 6, episode
Yeah.
7. I think it was 7. Let's go with 7. But whatever the Uruguay episode was, that was the last Binky we had, and so it's been a few episodes. And this one is not obviously like any Binky we've ever heard before. Immediately from the get go, like if I were at this show and they got on stage, you know, in these weird tree houses, and then just started making haunted house noises, I'd be like, okay, like what is going on here, right?
You'd
And
be psyched. You'd be
yeah,
so excited. Yeah, because there's like this spooky feeling, and it's like you can hear kitchen pots clanging. It feels like you're in like a deserted house out in the prairie somewhere, and there's
hmm
like an alien spaceship landing. It's just really cool, super vibey.
yeah, it's and then Bobby and Justin kind of seep in on the
Yeah.
keys, you know, Justin swelling the volume on the Rhodes, and Bobby uses a lot of Moog on this show. You know, in 2019 there was whammy clav everywhere, which there's a lot of whammy clav in this show as
Mhm.
well. But he uses the Moog so well in this Binky, and just the way he just adds into this really long intro is just so cool. There's like vibraphone happening, and the horns kind of add to the textures, and it's just like, you know, they're not rushing into the song. They're just like,
No.
I don't know, exploring this setup and the way that they were. And I so wish there were pictures. If anybody listening was at this show, if you have pictures of this show or video of this show, please send it to us, because
Yeah.
I'm dying to see what this looked like.
I know. And I think you're right. There's a patience to this whole entire show that really stands out. And
Yeah.
even when the horns bring it in and like the crowd goes nuts, that it's still really patient because they're like slowly easing into it. It's like this sultry, humid feeling. It feels like New Orleans in a way. I
Mhm.
think they really like met the moment of being in New Orleans. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Michael was also playing percussion at the beginning of this at the beginning of this Binky, because there's a distinct lack of bass for a while, you know, like
Yeah.
textural or otherwise, and so I'm pretty sure, you know, knowing Michael as a musician and how he's just like all over the place, you know, like
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, like extra percussion, like okay, you know, and so it works really well. And then you know, then they just bring in the song, as you said, like very smoothly. You know, the horns skip to the B section instead of dropping into the song again, which is kind of interesting. Another thing, this show is probably the sloppiest Snarky Puppy show I've ever heard. You know, there are a number of like a couple of like missed cues or, you know, different timing, which also, you know, they're not all on the same stage, right? I don't know how
Yeah.
well they could like look at each other, or Michael could cue different things to
I don't
happen.
think you can. Like if you the
Yeah.
pictures that I have seen of the venue, they're very kind of scattered. They're not even like lined up or in any sort of way that you could like make eye contact necessarily with everybody.
Mhm.
So like I think he probably couldn't conduct the way that he usually does, which is super challenging, but I think leads to this kind of loose feeling that I'm really into. I don't know. I
Yeah.
like sometimes, being the kind of fans that we are for the bands that we like sometimes messy is magic, right? And so like this I think
Messy is magic. I like that.
yeah, adds to that. Like there's a looseness and a messiness that I think is it pays off.
100%, 100%. And so we move into the first solo here, which is like again that just spacey vibe, and what Bobby does on the Moog here is just amazing. And then it's like,
Mm.
it's like starts off as a solo, and then it's like, wait, it's not a solo. They're just continuing this jam, that they were doing, and Justin's doing cool shit. This is really like this part, like everyone else is playing amazingly, but this is really just Justin and Bobby just doing
Yes.
incredible keyboard shit.
Oh my god, the tension between the keys and the percussion is just so good here. And I remember when I was reading about how the percussion was set up and I like looked at the pictures of the venue, I knew that they were just going to be on point during this show. Like
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, there's like hanging pots and pans for them. Like this is going to be next
they're
level
in.
percussion shit.
Yeah,
Yeah, like this is definitely them. So they are having like a blast during the
yeah.
show.
100%. And just as this goes, then like just Bobby just goes to space. We talked about a
Mhm.
lot in the last episode, the Japan episode, how much Bobby was just obliterating the universe on Moog, and he kind of does that again here. It's just
It's a
it's amazing.
spaceship blast off.
Yeah,
It's so good.
it's so good. And then they move into the second solo, which feels way more like regular Binky, but the way that Maz plays his solos in this show, his affected flugelhorn solos in this show, it's just so cool. He's got like, I think there's like a phaser or a flange or something on it, that he doesn't use. There's some combination of effects that's very unique to these shows, and it sounds amazing on this solo. It's just like it's weird, it's offbeat, which just again fits that vibe.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a muted feeling to it, almost like like a frayed at the edges feeling.
Hmm.
It works
Yeah,
really well.
yeah, absolutely. And then we get into I always call it the floaty part after the
Yeah.
second solo, where Justin brings in that melody, but Justin's just playing variations on it, continuing that. We're going to extend every single part of this show that we can because fuck it.
Yeah.
Like everything is longer than normal. I know we've seen 22-minute binkies on this before and a 32-minute binky, but it's usually when a binky is that long, it's usually like, okay, they go into some P-Funk on the outro, or like
Right.
Sean is going to go into Outcast, like we heard in episode 1. This is, the outro is the least exciting part of this Binky for me, which is so out of character for this song.
Yeah, and even for the show, like even at the end of the show, they do that too. Like usually they have such like a kind of triumphant ending when they like, like don't want to leave the stage and the crowd's going wild. It's just totally different. And I wonder how much of it was intentional if they were kind of thinking, okay, like we can't conduct the way we usually do. We can't communicate. We're not going to be as like tight. Like let's be free form. Let's really like ride vibes. Like I would be so curious to talk to Michael about that and find out.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting, the pick of the Binky opener, because again,
Hmm.
it's only the third version played in the entire year. They played 180 shows or something like that. I
Wow.
know. Yeah, it was
Is this
so many shows.
exhausting?
So many shows were played in 2019. They were on tour for 7 months straight, pretty much.
God.
And the songs that we get later in the show, all of them are in regular rotation throughout the whole year,
Hmm.
except for Binky. And so I think, just to speak off of what I know of the vibe and, my limited conversation with Michael, like this feels like we're missing a guitarist. We're in this weird setting. Let's do Binky. I'm just sad they didn't play
Yeah.
Quartermaster.
I know. It would have
This
been
feels
sick.
like
That's the
this feels
only
like the show
show
for it.
song. This is the only song that we're missing from this
Yeah,
show. Like this was a
should have been
quartermaster
the
show.
encore.
Yeah, exactly. Damn it.
Whatever. can't can't have everything.
Can't win them
And
all.
then
Can't win them all.
so we get into Embossed next. This is our first time hearing this song, Immigrants bonus track. But before we get into the song, again, extended intro. Normally this song
Mhm.
starts with these drums, but we just get Maz and Bullock just doing effects things over top of each other. Has this kind of klezmer feel to it, which they get a lot when you get these dueling horns. But it's like almost 3 minutes of just Maz and Bullock in their own corner in this venue, where no one else is, like just playing. And it's
I
awesome.
love that. I love the unhurried vibe of this whole, like the first two songs especially. There's just like nowhere they need to be, and when the drums kick in, it's so satisfying and they're really driving, which is such a nice compliment to this kind of relaxed vibe. And then you get into this like really spacey, super cool, intense section. I really liked this song.
It's really cool. And so,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to hear it again in the series, but it's a really cool song when you have, because it's also, the guitar is usually such a focal point of Embossed. Like it's there are guitar solos a lot of the time. If you go back to spring 2019, McQueen is taking the solo on almost every version, and
Oh,
so
wow.
it's really cool to hear Bobby step in on the Moog instead of guitar, and it's again that gritty tone.
Hmm.
There's that the spacey quality to it, but he just dials it in and just rips on the Moog, and it's awesome. It's awesome. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but Bobby is taking these guitar parts, but this song again, just like in the intro, it's the Maz and Bullock show. That they both kind of go back and forth on the outro. Not in the outro. Sorry, on the solo section. And it feels like, is Michael playing percussion again? Justin is playing very heavy synth bass, and like, where's Michael?
I
Doing
really want to
something.
know like where he was and where everybody was set at, like how he was set up and who he
Yeah.
was with, because it doesn't say in anything that I've read about, and I would just love to know where he was. But yeah, the percussion is so layered in this whole entire show. So he's definitely must be on it, because it sounds like there's like 25 drummers at some point. Like
Right.
it's like
Exactly.
it really does. Like
Yeah, it's not just two of them,
no.
100%. Like Michael has to be jumping in on percussion. There's a lack of bass in sometimes, and there's too much percussion for him to just be playing. I wonder, is I assume a venue like this, like there's percussion everywhere, and so
Yeah.
maybe the horns are playing percussion at sometimes when they're not playing. Like
Yeah, exactly.
anything could happen. Anything could happen.
Anything can happen at the Music Box Village. It's just,
It's
it's a
true.
wild place.
It's
I really
true.
want to go,
Yeah, I know, right? I want
right?
Snarky Puppy to go.
That
Listen,
would be so
if
sick.
Snarky
Okay,
Puppy comes back
we're
here, I'm
going.
flying to New Orleans. Like
We're
I,
going
I don't,
down.
I don't care. I don't
If
care
they
when
play
it
there,
is, what I
we're
have to
going
do.
down.
Yeah,
We're gonna go down and we're gonna record live from there. So they better do it.
perfect, perfect. Yeah, and I will film the whole show,
Yeah,
so there's
exactly.
a record of
I'll
it.
I'll make Ryan get like a little tripod out there and record the whole entire thing, or just hold it up like I've been known to force you do before, to hold up your phone with your elbow there.
Throwback to Garcia's.
Yep.
Anyway, we get Tarova next. This is probably, at least in my listening to this show, the most underrated track. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, it's Tarova. I remember this being pretty similar to a regular Tarova. It is for the first little while.
Mhm.
There's no. This is the first time we've heard in the episode the 2019 arrangement of Tarova. We heard it a bunch in 2017 and 2018 in its older form. But this one, there's no Sean, no talk box on this, so you just get Bobby vibing out on the organ on the intro, which is great. I love this vibe. And then here's where things start to take a turn. Bullock's solo, and then as the solo unfolds, the grooves get sparser and sparser and sparser. Then it's a drum and sax breakdown. Then it's just a sax breakdown. and then it just stops.
Yeah.
Like they're just breaking it down further and further and further, and it's so cool.
It's
Like
so cool.
yeah,
Especially how it comes out of like, this song has such a confident, like happy swagger.
mhm.
And then to feel it kind of like disintegrate, or it's not really the right word because it's more like they're taking pieces of it apart. And so it's like, it's kind of like just, yeah, like getting like less and less formed. And it's just really good and soulful somehow. I don't know how they're doing it. It's really interesting. I don't.
Yeah, it's so cool. And then we get the percussion solo on the outro. Again, somebody's making the haunted wind sounds, which has to be a percussion thing.
Yeah.
And Keita is soloing, so it's not him. So I wonder who it is, but it's so cool because this percussion solo that normally is just a straight ahead percussion solo with this Tarova vamp happening in the background. Again, Justin, I feel like, is the guy that always like pushes them in a jammier direction. Like, What
Yeah.
About Me or anything like that. Like, he's usually the one that's hopping on synth bass, like playing off of the soloist, whatever. And so he starts doing that again here. And the percussion solo gradually fades into like a jammier space, which is so cool. Kind of feels like the beginning of the Binky. And it's just, it's so good.
I love the looseness and the like willingness to just stretch in this show.
Yeah.
This is like my favorite kind of Snarky Puppy. This when they like, I like it when they're really tight and funky, and then I like it when they're really loose and jammy. Like those are like shocker. That's just like my favorite kind of music.
Yeah.
But
So
you're like not
out of
surprised.
character for you,
I
Megan.
know you're like really. But yeah, it's just that's why I really love this show. There's just this, yeah, especially in this piece, like I love how they're willing to kind of go and allow the space to kind of fill in, which I think is amazing because all of them are such incredible musicians that like when they do get quiet and when they do stretch things out, it's just magic. It's really incredible.
Yeah, and this song doesn't end like it usually does. It just gradually fades, which is so cool. They don't bring it back to the proper ending. And so if there were a setlist database for Snarky Puppy, there would be an unfinished footnote on this Tarova.
Yes.
Um,
And then the beginning to Xavi is just so cool.
yeah,
There's just that like one
wood blocks
solo wood
or
blocks,
whatever.
and it's just like, and it just hits, and they don't rush that either. I love how that's just like the one sound you hear, and then it just stays underneath it when the band kicks in. It's like super cool. You can still
So,
hear it.
and I'm so curious, because this Chavi is like all over the place, like in terms of
Yeah.
arrangement of the song. So I'm curious how much they did they practice it like this at sound check? Did they talk about like, okay, Jameson, you're gonna play the ending drum part before we
Right.
start the song, or is it just like, fuck it, we ball. Like we're just going for it. I noted this as an inverted Xavi, which is probably a bit of a stretch, but like there's this percussion ending. Justin starts playing the bass line on synth bass, and then Jameson plays a bit of the ending on drums, and then they drop into the beginning of the song.
It's crazy.
It's so weird. And
Yeah,
and
it
this is
seems
where Michael is
intentional.
on
I don't
guitar.
know. Right. Yes. You can hear that too.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird. Like there's so many things going on and so many things out of the ordinary on this song, and it's like it's hard to process it all.
We have a lot of questions about this show. I
Yeah.
feel like we need to do some like investigative reporting about the show and talk to the band because I'm very curious.
Yeah, I think we need like one of the band members who was at this show to come on the
Yes.
pod and talk to us about it because there's so much we need to know.
I bet they have a lot of funny stories too because, like I mentioned earlier, when Michael said it was a challenge at the end, like, you know, I don't know. I wonder if he felt like the show wasn't as successful as he wanted it to be, or because it was harder for him to lead. I
Hmm.
think it was incredibly successful because I like
Yeah.
this kind of music, but
Well,
I
exactly.
wonder what they felt, like, yeah.
Yeah, like I know there are probably fans who are like the tight jazz fans
Yeah.
who probably you know look at this show and they're like garbage. Like I saw
Yeah.
some posts online about this show and they're like I went like on Reddit I think they were like I went and it was a mess and it was like like I can't believe I
Wow.
paid for that and it's like it puts it in perspective how like people are going to a Snarky Puppy show expecting this tight musicianship and not
Yeah.
this incredible level of experimentation that we love so much.
Right, yeah.
Right,
That's
like
so fascinating. It's all just, like, the lens that you're looking through, right? Like,
yeah,
for fans like us, our favorite bands, they walk the tightrope all the time, right? They take risks,
correct.
they play, like, and they fall sometimes, right? When you play improvised music, you fall, and it's messy sometimes, like we talked about earlier, but when it hits, it's so incredible. And so, yeah, for us listening to this show, this is like a gem. I think I told you before we started recording, this is my favorite Snarky Puppy show I've heard
I think it's mine
because
too. Yeah.
yeah, like we like this stuff. We like the mess. We like and it's not even messy. That's totally inappropriate to call it that. This is so far from messy. It's just we like the looseness and the risk taking
Yeah,
because these
it's
guys are such incredible musicians. They can take risks like this.
yes, exactly. Like
Yeah.
if I was at this show like 2 minutes into Binky, I would have been like on the floor like, like
Yeah.
dying of happiness. Like this
I
this
know.
is this is like our dream for a
Yeah.
Snarky Puppy show and what it could look
Yeah.
like. And I hope there's a circumstance that creates a show like this at some point again because they're so good at improvising in
Yeah, they
even in
really
this
are.
kind of setting where it's like
They can't even
all
see each
over the
other.
map and
Yeah.
there was no like probably no planning for how they were going to improvise these. They were probably like Michael's like, okay, we're going to play Binky first. Let's go on stage and fuck around a bit before we play Binky.
Yeah.
And because each of them individually are such incredible musicians, they're able to and because of the jazz influence, it's like we're all going to
Yeah.
suggest these ideas and something's going to stick, something's going to be different. We're going to build it into the song in whatever way it happens. And that's so cool that they can do that because I feel like a lot of bands who don't improvise like this all the time would be
Yeah.
like nervous going on stage. And I'm sure they were
Oh,
nervous a little
yeah.
bit. Like we don't have a guitar, we're not looking at
Right.
each other, right? Like we can't
We're not
talk to
even
each other
standing
during the
next to each
show.
other.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
and a lot of bands have like in ears as well, and so there would be like a talkback mic, but they don't run in ears. Um,
I mean, it's not easy to play like this. It's not easy to play improvised jazz music. Like
yeah,
it's really fucking hard. And so like not many people do it, And these guys though are good enough that they can. And this show is a perfect example of that. And you see them exploring in a way that it's like, oh, I just think it has huge reward.
yeah, it's truly incredible. Let's get back into this Chavi here.
Yeah, this Bob solo is gorgeous. He's just able to bring a sensibility to this solo and it fits so well with this song. Like, usually he's got that like deep, rich kind of like soul, just sultriness. And this has like a looser, softer feeling to it, typical Bob Reynolds, he's just able to find the moment and meet it perfectly. I really liked this, and I'm happy for the longer solo any day.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Then Michael takes a weird guitar break after this. He's got like a bunch of effects on it. I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but he's just like fucking around, which is the theme of the show. And like I want to talk to them about this. I want to be like,
I know.
what are we doing here? What is this?
Yeah, it has like a forward moving, like kind of train feeling almost.
Yeah,
It's really different.
yeah, it's so cool. Maz comes up again. Another solo from Maz. He's all over the show, but he takes another one on this kind of weird affected flugel.
Hmm.
Sounds like he's dancing around little Herbie Hancock chameleon at one point,
Yeah, it's really
which is
nice.
pretty cool. And again, I'm thinking during the solo, did Michael put down the guitar and start playing percussion again? Because there's so much percussion happening. It's not just
This
one person. There's no
this
way.
whole show is like a showcase of percussion and how expertly they can layer them. I mean, there are so many times in the show when you can just try to isolate the percussion and it's almost impossible. There's just so much of it. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
so cool. And then we get into the clap section, which we have done 2 immigrants episodes yet, and we have yet to hear like a 15-minute tutorial on how to do this clap, which sadly we are going to hear in the next 2 episodes. Just eats like a big chunk of the set. You look at like the time and it's like, 24-minute chunks. Like, what are they doing here? And it's a 10-minute chunks and then 14 minutes of Michael explaining how to do the polyrhythm clap to the crowd.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
Yeah, this part's it's cool though. I mean, I like it without an introduction because it's kind of like trippy and it feels like you're in this like, I don't know, psychedelic like medicine ceremony or something. Cause when the flute comes in, it's like,
Hmm.
oh, it's very cool. Like I love when they get psychedelic. It's my favorite.
Yeah, and the flute has that kind of spooky feel to it.
Yeah.
And when he does stuff with it that he doesn't usually do, obviously. Um, but then Justin's Rhodes solo comes in, pretty standard Rhodes solo, but I love the like bouncy lyrical quality to his
Mm.
Xavi Rhodes solos. They're excellent.
Yeah, it's really nice when this comes in. Just a great ending.
Yeah. And then that ends, and then obviously, we can't have the normal intro to Chonks. We can't. That's not how this show works.
Mm-mm.
That's not what we're doing here today. And so Bobby takes, a minute, sets up the vibe a little on the whammy clav. Just some incredible sustain. Make any guitar player jealous. I'm sure it's easier to. I'm sure it's easier to hold sustain on a clav than it is on a guitar because you don't have to worry about like the angle in relation to your amp. It just like
Right,
doesn't.
right.
It's there whether the sustain works or it doesn't.
Oh, it's so like funky and meaty. It's just this intro is yes, please. It's
Yeah.
so good.
It's
Hmm.
great. And then Maz takes the main melody of the song because obviously no talk box. So, he gets in. Sometimes, when Sean's not there and they play Chonks, the melody feels a little lacking. Maz
Mm.
dials in the right amount of effects here. So the notes are articulate and it has that power that cuts through the groove. And so 2 thumbs up. I love this song.
Yeah, I feel
And then
like
Bob Reynolds again.
everybody kind of really stepped up in Sean's absence. Sean
Yeah.
is such a big presence in this band, and I feel like when he's not there, everybody else just fills that. And I felt like when I first heard Sean on a show, I was like, every show is going to be missing him after that when he's not there. But it doesn't feel like that. Like they all kind of just step up and fill in.
Hmm.
And yeah, this Bob Reynolds all day long, most effortless player. He just makes it sound so easy, incredible.
Just another example of just sitting there hanging out for a while. Like I kept
Hmm.
I kept waiting for the horns to come back in and end the solo, and it's like no, we're just gonna keep hanging out on this groove. And then
Yeah.
just when you think his solo's done, it's like, no, actually, there's a special guest that's going to come on stage. Like, Ma's just like, ladies and gentlemen, like, Nicholas Payton. It's like, I wonder if there was, like, he was supposed to be there at the beginning of the song, or he just kind of showed up, and they were like, yeah, like, no, come play.
Ladies and gentlemen from New Orleans, Louisiana, Nicholas Payton.
Yeah, you can almost hear him someone say like, yeah, he's here. Okay, great. And then like they introduce him. It almost sounds like they weren't sure if he was there or not. Like it's so great. But I thought this was cool. Like Michael's playing like some really super deep chord notes at like the end of this solo. It's like almost like angry and like clotting sounding, which is just such a great juxtaposition to the solo. And you've got another like cool trippy effects, like interesting psychedelic moment at the end of this song. And I really like Chonks, and this is a cool version.
Yeah, it's also interesting. Another kind of, the loose moment or the missed cue where, some of the band exits the solo and some people take a second to catch up, so that's probably another casualty of not being able to see each other properly. But
yeah,
they push through, they keep going, and we get Chonks as it's meant to be, with Bobby destroying the outro on clav, and
yes,
oh yeah, never gets old. This Chonks outro.
Now it's so good. And then there's another kind of like percussive intro to Tio Macaco, right?
Well, I mean, my feelings on this song. Could I have done without it on this show? Absolutely. Am I surprised that it's in this show with all the extra percussion? Absolutely not. This was going to happen.
I didn't mind it. I felt like it kind of worked here. Like, it's got that tribal beat. It's really like in the beginning, they're really like soft and kind of like flirting with the melody.
And
I
then
think this
someone in the crowd is like, yeah, like gets really excited.
I know, it's so great.
Yeah.
I mean, this show does not have a moment that's not like relentless and interesting. I feel, sometimes you get they'll play a song that's like really mellow and have like, that gives you like a breather moment. There's not really one of those. And this whole show, the drums and percussion are just non-stop on fire the whole show.
100%.
It's incredible.
Shout out to Jameson and Keita and probably Michael.
Yeah. And maybe somebody else. Who knows?
And maybe other people. Yeah. We need answers.
We have so many questions.
We need answers on this podcast. But yeah, it's Tio Macaco. And, as you said at the beginning, Michael thanks the venue after and was like, challenging. He introduces the band. So he doesn't say like, saxophone, flute, and percussion. So
yeah,
who knows? Who knows what happened? But that's the end of our 9/28/19 here. Pretty crazy show.
I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I really want to know like how they felt about this show. Like I want to know if they walked off and they were like, God, that sucked. Or, they walked off and like, that was fun. That was different. I'm so curious because I feel like they have really high expectations of themselves. And the way that, I've only seen them once, but the way that Michael leads the band is so tight. And like, I just wonder if this felt frustrating.
Interesting.
And I just want to tell them that it was really good.
They should do this more. Yeah. Like do this again, please.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our bonus track for today. We're going to go back around 2 weeks and have a very different lineup on this one. But 9/15/19, What About Me from Charlotte, North Carolina. thank you to Jake Funkmayer for videoing this entire show from the rail. We appreciate this. You can check out on YouTube, and I will also link it in the post about this podcast. But the video for this show and this What About Me, you get a nice perspective. Justin gets a solo for his birthday. They're excited about it. If you go back around 20 seconds before the song starts, you'll hear Sean trying to organize strippers for Justin's after party after the show.
Stop.
It's pretty funny banter. This whole show is great. The only big ugly in 2019. So a lot to dig into there. It's cool. But
Well, I
this
love
What About
and
Me
it's
this What
great.
About Me is one of my favorite versions of the song ever.
It's super sick. It's funky. It's super groovy. I love how Michael's like, give it up for Justin, your neighbor. And
Right,
like,
'cause he's
they're in
from
North Carolina.
Tennessee,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I was down in this actually neighborhood of Charlotte, North Carolina last week. And it's just a really cool, hip place. And I love imagining Snarky Puppy playing there. This must have been so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is cool because it's one of those What About Me's where it's not just a solo, but you get the whole band jumping in on a bit of
Mhm.
improv before they hit back into the vamp. And so Justin starts this theme. We talked about it in episode 6, spring 2017 show. I believe it was the Wrocław, Poland show, where Justin kind of plays this riff during his What About Me solo. And I mentioned like that's going to come back in this one. And that riff
Mhm.
is the focal point of this jam that they get into. He's playing around on the Prophet with a very bassy synth sound for a while, starts adding in Rhodes, and then gets into this lick. And you can see in the video, throughout the solo, Michael was sitting, in Bobby's rig, just kind of like watching Justin play and just enjoying. And then he really starts vibing, when Justin gets into this groove. JT and Nate hit into this like house vibe.
Oh,
Amazing percussion on this
amazing.
part. Yeah,
They're
it's
so tight.
so
They're
good.
killing it. It's so good. And watching Justin in the video of this is pretty special.
Yeah,
Like
he moves.
he is all over the place. Like he plays with his whole body. It's really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. So everyone gradually comes back in. You get, Bobby comes back out on the clav. Sean adds some Mellotron. When Michael starts hitting in, you can really feel that bass coming through extra punchy, and it's really cool. And then they get into the vamp. Justin kind of takes a couple of measures to, he's thinking about like what he wants to do on the vamp. And in that interim, Michael does some really cool fills. So you can see on the video, Justin just like, go, like, take the solo. And so
Yes.
Michael takes the rest of this What About Me, and it's awesome. We don't get Michael bass solos on this scale very often, especially a Michael What About Me is exceedingly rare. But this is awesome. He delivers. Bass is a hard instrument, especially with a vamp of this like high energy. It could be hard to cut through and be, the focal point as the soloist, but he does it.
Oh, he nails it. It's so good. It's really good. It's thrashing. It's powerful. Like I really love that solo. I wish he would do more of them because he's sick.
Yes. And then, it's a drum solo. It's a What About Me drum solo. We got some nice textures from Justin. Bobby comes in a little bit towards the end there, but it's just a great, trash everything in sight solo from JT.
The best kind.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. I love talking about this show. I wish there were more shows like this for us to talk about because like
I know.
it
was
it's
really
incredible.
fun. I mean, this is definitely the kind of music I like. I like it when people play dangerous, and
Yeah.
they did, and it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, next episode, 2 weeks from now, we only have 2 episodes left in this season, which is
Wow.
kind of crazy. We're almost at the end of 2019. It's hard to believe. It's like I know it's like 6 months by the time it's over, but like it's in terms of doing these podcasts, it's felt pretty fast.
It's flown by. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been really fun.
It's been great. And so next episode, we will be heading to Europe once again. For our last 2, we'll be part of this end of 2019 Europe tour. Our first one is October 26th, 2019 in Hamburg, I want to say.
Hamburg.
Hamburg? It's not Hamburg.
Hamburg.
It's Hamburg. Okay. I'm sorry.
I
for
think
being
that's how. I mean, it's
uncultured
probably
North
pronounced
American.
totally differently in Germany, but that's
Right.
how. When I saw fish there, that's how I pronounced it. Just a little flex there for you.
Okay. Oh, when you saw fish in Europe back in the day, before I was alive. But we're gonna go over there. We're gonna have our first 2 guitar show since I think episode 4, and our only one where it's Mark and McQueen together.
Ooh, fun. That's gonna be
So
good.
really cool lineup. Also unique. Justin and Sean as the only 2 keyboards. This end of October, early November leg before the Royal Albert Hall show was the only part of 2019 where Bobby was not on tour.
Wow.
So you hear all these songs that have so much clav as the focal point. You hear them with a different lens, because Sean is covering those parts on Moog, on Talkbox. Justin's covering some of them. The guitars are covering some of them. So it's really cool, and I'm really excited to dive into this show. I absolutely love it. There's some unique soloists on songs that we haven't heard in a little while, but that's a story for episode 11, which we'll see you for that, or we will talk about it to you. You will hear us for that in a couple of weeks. In between now and then, breaking the fourth wall a little bit, we're gonna go see a lot of Fish. And I'm excited about that.
I'm really excited too.
Yeah.
We'll be taking a lot of photos together and texting each other a lot about fish.
Yes, and talking about it in real
Yeah.
life. And if you
In
like
real
fish and you
life.
want to hear us talk about fish, go check out HF Pod. Megan is on there every day after a fish show, and I weasel my way on a couple of times because
When we're lucky enough to have you.
oh, thank you, because I have
Yeah.
I'm very needy and I need to podcast about music or I'll die.
Same.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening to this episode of Things of Gold. Crazy that we've made it 10 episodes in already. We really appreciate all of your support and listening to us ramble about music because it's a lot of fun. We love doing it.
We do. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.